Welcome to the Jones Zone, a podcast by Darryl and JJ Jones.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Jones Zone. Today, we're going to have David Syke from Top Dog Detection. And I tell you, I've known David for many, many years. For some reason, we reconnected recently, and I just noticed that I knew that you were an expert on, everybody knows this topic, bed bugs. And I thought, oh my goodness, I think this would be a great show because ever since we were little kids, everybody knows that you can't let them bite you. Don't let the bed bugs bite. So, David, introduce yourself and tell me a little bit, how long you've been doing it, et cetera.
Thank you, Darryl. It's really an honor to be here and do this and participate. One of the goals of my company has always been to educate people about what bed bugs are. So a little bit about myself. I actually have a degree in horticulture and worked in the horticultural industry for a number of years and had the opportunity during that time to transition into pesticide sales. But it was always on the landscape and nursery side. It was never in horticulture. We see the world. So if I ask, never in the structural pest control side of business. And in 2009, I had a back injury and had to have back surgery. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go with my business and everything. And I was on the treadmill and I saw a story about bed bug detection dogs. And they were using canines to sniff out bed bugs. And so I thought, well, let me kind of pursue that. So I did a lot of research and all that stuff, and then started my business in 2011 doing bed bug detection work, looking for using canines to sniff out bed bugs in a number of places.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't even realize that. I guess I should have known by the title of your company that. So you actually walk us through the process. You have dogs that you own that can detect bed bugs.
Correct. So the skill set that they really have is what we call odor recognition. So dogs smell the world like we see the world. So if I ask you to go out to a parking lot and find a blue truck, you would go out and you would be able to recognize that because you know what blue is and you know what a truck is, right? But you would see all the other white cars and yellow buses and whatever else is out there, right? You would see everything there. And as long as you got a reward for finding that blue truck, you would always do that, right? So the trick for odor recognition is teaching the dog to recognize a particular odor and being able to alert. So it's the same principle as a drug dog or a bomb dog or any other canine that does odor recognition work, right? So it's being able to recognize an odor and being able to alert the handlers to where that odor is emanating from.
Curious, is there a specific dog that is best suited for this role?
No.
Really?
A lot of people use beagles. That's the common breed that you see used a lot. The dog that I started with is a lab mix. They all have their own advantages and disadvantages to them.
So tell me how it works. So I'm guessing it's funny because I may have mentioned, I told my wife we were doing bed bugs and she said, well, real estate? And I said, well, my show's about everything about real estate. Hotels are real estate. Is it fair to say that they're most common in hotels, or tell me more?
Well, that's part of the problem. So the reason why it's really more of an issue is because we're starting to get them into our homes, right? We didn't care so much about when they were in a hotel room, right? We didn't want to go to a hotel and get bit, but it was only the experience of the time that you were there that you were experiencing it, right? But as we've gotten more and more exposure and the bed bug problem has spread, now we're seeing them into our homes. So now we're dealing with them on a daily basis, 24/7 within your home. And so it's just become more and more of an issue within our society over time. So yeah, we do still see them very prevalently in hotels, but we see them in lots of other places within our community, so restaurants, churches, movie theaters, any place that somebody's going to sit for an idle period of time and be concentrated on something so that they wouldn't notice a bed bug coming out and feeding on them. So when we talk a little bit about how bed bugs work and feed and all that stuff, it'll kind of make a little bit more sense as to why we see them in some locations but not others.
It's funny. I was telling a couple of friends of mine, I was doing the show about bed bugs, and they said, oh, after the show, everybody's going to be going like this and like this. Oh, yeah. How do you know? It's kind of similar to fleas, or you tell me more.
It varies. I had the unfortunate task of having to maintain live bed bugs. I had to feed the bed bugs. Bed bugs only feed on blood their entire life cycle. So the worst part of my job was feeding bed bugs in order for them to be alive, right? That's how I maintain the dog's training, is to be able to sniff out the odor, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Bed bugs are visible to the human eye. right? As adults, they're probably the size of an apple seed, so maybe an eighth of an inch.
Wow.
Right?
So they're bigger than fleas.
They're bigger than a flea, and that's not a full-grown adult, right?
Who are bedbugs' cousins? They're related to the flea and tick family?
Probably the closest insect that you would know it by would be an aphid. Bedbugs have what they call a piercing, sucking mouth parts, right? So they don't chew, they don't bite you. They actually pierce into your skin, and then with their mouth parts called the proboscis, they insert that into the skin, through the skin, and then they're able to extract that out. Similar to a mosquito, but a different family than mosquitoes. Mosquitoes only feed on blood as female adults, where adult females are the only mosquitoes that feed on you.
Got it.
Right? Bed bugs feed both males and females their entire life cycle only on blood.
How long do they live? How long is a bedbug's lifespan?
So if they're getting fed regularly and in a good environment, a year probably.
Okay.
They can go months though without feeding and just kind of wait for you to get back. So there's a couple key things about bed bugs that are different. So most bugs that we talk about within the pest control field are what we call occasional home invaders. So if you think about ants or cockroaches or fleas or anything else, they're not after us per se. I know you're itching. I can see that.
No, I had a real
But what happens is, right, they're after the things that we provide to them. So harborage, someplace to be able to be protected, right? Food, water, those sort of things. So they're after the things that we provide to them, but not directly after us. Bed bugs don't care. Bed bugs want us. That's all they want. They want human blood to feed off of. It's the only thing they consume their entire life cycles.
Only human blood?
Well, they can feed on other hosts, but typically humans are the primary host for bed bugs.
Interesting.
So, and there's a couple different reasons for it, and we can talk about it. So fleas are flat like this, right? So they can go in between the hairs of an animal and walk on its skin, right? A bed bug is flat this way, really thin, flat this way. So it has a hard time trying to walk around on the fur of an animal. Right?
Interesting.
It doesn't translate very well to that, right? So because they don't fly and because they don't jump, what they do is they harbor close to their food source so that when their food source comes to them, they come out, they feed, and they go back and they hide. They only have to feed about every 3 to 5 days. So they wait in that spot for some other food source to come back. Well, so we closely associate them with beds because every single night you go back to bed. So you may get bit one night, but the next night you don't, the next night you don't. The third, fourth night, all of a sudden they're hungry. And now when the population gets high enough, there's some that want to feed every night. But it's not the same bug per se, but it's some of this same bug colony.
That's what I was going to ask, the colony. So they live in colonies? I mean, there's typically...
They'll live in a group. Yeah, you'll typically find them clustered in a group together somewhere in close proximity to the bed. A lot of times we find them in the mattress. We'll find them in the box spring underneath. They like confined places and dark places. So you can see in the video how swollen up they get, right? So if you put any pressure on that bug when he's full like that, he literally will explode like a
balloon,
like a water balloon. Okay. And it creates what we call a blood smear. It literally shows like a little explosion. So that's an indicator of a bed bug. So if you wake up in the morning and you see this little red blood smear, like a little explosion, and they could be, an inch long. I mean, there's a fair amount of blood inside that, right? So when it pops, because you rolled over before it's gotten away, right? That would be an indication of bed bugs. So that's one thing that people can look for.
How do they travel? How do they get from here to there?
So because they don't fly and they don't jump, right? They only crawl. They rely on us. If you get bed bugs in your home, it's because you bring them into your home, right? So you go on vacation, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of different complicated things to the issue, but if you go to a pest control person and you get bed bugs and you call them out, the first thing they're going to say is they're going to try to console you, and they're going to say, well, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you got bed bugs. Well, then whose fault is it? Because you're charging me thousands of dollars for this treatment. Why? So everybody's trying to blame somebody else for it, but it's really a lack of education, a lack of knowledge. People don't know what they are and how you get them, right? So you go to a hotel. We've already established that hotels can have high populations of bed bugs, right? So if you go there and potentially are exposed to bed bugs, when you come home, that's what you want to do. You need to break the cycle so that you make sure that you're not bringing them to introduce them into your home. So they hitchhike in your luggage, on your clothes, on just different belongings, right? They're not on your skin hanging on like a tick, right? Once they're done feeding, they try to go and hide. So as soon as they've hidden, they're going to hide in, if you're wearing a jacket, maybe they're in the jacket pocket. You come home, you take your jacket off, you throw your jacket down onto the bed, right? Now you introduce the bug kind of in the environment where they need to be so that when they are hungry again, guess what? Their food source is going to come back to them again. So you got to make sure that you don't do that. So what I recommend is that if you go on vacation, when you come home, treat it as though you have bed bugs. Unpack everything in the bathtub, in the garage. Seal up your luggage in a trash bag, leave it in the garage, wash everything, launder it, right? Don't put it on your bed and unpack it on your bed, right? Because now you're just bringing them right in, right? And we do it all the time. Think about, Darryl, the holidays when we have a Christmas party or something, you bring everybody over to your house, right? And what do you do with all their purses, all their jackets, all the things that were hanging on their bedposts, that were laying on their bed, they were sitting on, right? You put them on your bed, right? You bring their stuff, and they're not going to come back and say, hey, Darryl, guess what? I think I have bed bugs, and that you might want to check your bed, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to admit that it's an issue, it's a problem. And therefore, it just perpetuates the problem going forward because there's so much just negativity, I guess, towards it. It's just a negative stereotype.
Are there climates that they are attracted to? Do they like warm weather and they don't like cold weather, anything like that?
Just a temperate climate, right? Our moderate AC, forced air heating environment is perfect for them, right? Most residential homes have a, perfect atmosphere for them to survive in. So if you take really cold temperatures, their real negative side is heat. 122 degrees is the thermal death point for a bed bug. If they reach that temperature, they're dead within a few seconds, actually. Heat is a really good way to be able to treat them, right? But it's not always as easy as it sounds, right? I can take something and I can put it in a car and I can put the car out in the hot sun, right? And inside the car, it'll get hot enough that it would kill the bed bugs, right? But how do I get my entire home that hot?
Right.
It's pretty difficult to do because the bed bugs themselves, as soon as they feel the heat, they start trying to find place, right? Remember, they're trying to already burrow and hide in tight places. So you have the leg of a dresser sitting down onto carpet. How long does it take for the heat to penetrate all the way to the middle of that, right? He easily calls between those carpet fibers, gets tucked down underneath there, right? So you have to heat that home to 140 degrees for 10 hours. Right? How long do you have to heat it for to be able to get the heat to penetrate into all the nooks and crannies where all those bugs can be? It's difficult.
I was thinking putting luggage in your trunk, but that's irrelevant. So how do you get rid of them?
So it depends on how large the problem is. If it's recognized early and fairly isolated, right, then treatment's fairly simple. There's some pretty good pesticides that we have out there that are available. Some of the things that are important to note is active ingredients. About 50% of the bedbug population shows at least some resistance to pyrethroid pesticides. Most of the bedbug products that are available to homeowners, that's the active ingredient that they contain. So sometimes the active ingredient that you're buying as a homeowner isn't going to be effective against. That's another thing that's causing the problem. So homeowner recognizes they have a problem. They don't want to call a pest control person to treat it. They go and they buy pesticides at a box store. They come home, they try to treat it themselves. All it does is piss them off so that they just spread throughout the whole house, right? And now the problem's larger. And now the problem's larger and larger and larger until they get to the point of calling us to come out. And now we're saying, okay, we have to tent. We have to fumigate the house to do it.
Wow.
Right?
So
problem can get literally that bad.
I'm not sure. I've never asked a termite man if they do bed bugs, but I'm guessing, and I was able to find out that a lot of termite men, pest control, termite people don't do a lot of other things that one would think. I'm guessing, do regular termite people do bed bugs normally, or no? It's got to be a specialty like yourself, or
Within structural pest control, there's 3 branches of certification. So branch 1 has to do with fumigation. So those are the guys that tint the house and put the gas in. Branch 2 is general pest, which is what I do. And branch 3 is what we call wood destroying organisms, or a lot of times as a realtor, you would say termite guy.
yeah, yeah.
So a lot of times the termite guy is doing an inspection for termites, right? If he needs termite work done in order to get clearance for him to say, okay, it's free, he needs to hire somebody that's a branch 1 to come out and do that, right? So if I am doing a job and my recommendation is that I need the house to be fumed, right? What I do is I call a branch 1 fumigator that normally would be tenting for termites, but now is going to tent for me. There is different protocol as far as the rates and quantities and length of time that the tent has to be on. There are other things that go along, but that's just label requirements. The technical part of putting the tent on and putting the gas in is the same.
If someone had their house tinted, fumigated for termites, does that also kill any bed bugs that may be in the house?
It potentially could, but you're not guaranteed of it because the rate of fumigant is about 1.9 times as high for bed bugs as what it is for termites. So if you were fuming a house for bed bugs, because it's 1.9 times the rate of termites, you're going to also kill all the termites that are in the house, right? And that's one of the reasons why sometimes we'll offer that as a suggestion. If their home hasn't been fumigated in a number of years, they can take care of 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. But if you have a bed bug infestation and you treat it at a termite rate, it's not a high enough concentrated rate to be able to kill the bed bugs. It might kill them, but it's not guaranteed to do it, right? So if you were trying to eliminate bed bugs with a fumigation, you would need to make sure you were using that higher rate.
Interesting. What is a bed bug and how are they different from other pests we encounter?
Okay, so that's basically, as opposed to being an occasional home invader that's after the, right? They're after us, right? They don't care if we're clean. They don't care if we're dirty, right? No matter how you try to separate people, bed bugs don't care, right? So black, white, gay, straight, rich, poor, Democrat, doesn't matter, right? A bed bug sees us all the same, right? I say they're the ultimate, right? Like non-racist, bigoted, whatever insect, because they literally don't care. If you have blood flowing through your body, they want you.
And especially humans. Are there any animals that bed bugs love besides humans too?
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of. We are their primary host. They will feed off of others as a secondary, pets and things like that, sometimes in the home. But like I said, it's very difficult. For them to really be established and thrive within the home, they need access to people.
So why have they become such an issue? And has it become more of an issue in recent years? I mean, we've been hearing as a kid, and I'm 90 and you're 60, so I'm just kidding. And so we've been hearing, don't go to bed, don't let the bed bugs bite, forever. So have they gotten worse here in the last few decades?
I'll tell you a story about that. So in 2001, I was just starting in pesticide sales, and I was working for a distributor. And like I said, my sales territory was landscape and golf courses. That's what the market I was selling to. But I was doing my training in the office, and we had a gentleman come in, and he said, "Hey, do you want to see what a bed bug is?" And I was trying to be a hot shot, hey, I have my pest control advisor's license, and I have this and I have that, and I said, well, let's look it up. There's no such thing as a bed bug. That's just something my mom told me. And he said, no, son, he was an older gentleman. He said, no, there's really a such thing as a bed bug. And so we pulled out the book and we looked it up. So in 2001, as a licensed professional, even though I was on the landscape side, I didn't even know what bed bugs were, right? So that's how far behind we only know it as a nursery rhyme, but we had very little experience with them, right? They weren't involved in our environment for the most part as children growing up in a normal environment. Sometimes we see heavy populations in low socioeconomic conditions where you have 15 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment, where the conditions are so right that no matter where a bed bug gets introduced, they can find a meal. So there are some things like that.
They'll gravitate.
So let's talk about a little bit about why we see a problem now that we haven't seen in the past, right? So they were a problem, 1900s, turn of the century, going along. We came through World War II and we got DDT and we got chlordane. We got all kinds of really good, well, quote, at the time we thought good pesticides that we sprayed for everything, right? So we sprayed baseboards, we sprayed outside, we sprayed everything, right? Over time, we've said, oh, these are dangerous, they're bad for the environment, and we've started to change the way that we treat pests within our environment. As a kid growing up in the 70s, I rarely saw lizards or anything around, right? Now I see them everywhere, right? Same environment, same. The difference is that in the 1970s, we killed every bug that was out there. Now we manage the bugs and not trying to eliminate all of them. So we're just trying to control the population so the populations don't get high enough to come into your home. We're not trying to necessarily eliminate ants entirely from your backyard, which is what the lizards and things were eating. And the birds population is higher because now the birds have the lizards to eat. So it just goes on and on and on, right? So it's even gotten worse than that. So if you have a pest control contract, typically they're going to come out once a year and spray inside. The rest of the time, they're going to spray on the exterior of your home. If you have a problem in your home, right, when we come out, we treat very specific for that particular pest, right? So we put out an ant gel for ants, right? They take the bait, they consume the bait, they take the bait back, they spread it to the colony. We're very effective. But it's only going to kill the ants. It's not going to do anything for any other insect problem that you have, right? So because we've changed the style of pesticides that we use, we changed the methods and application sites where we use, right? Bed bugs aren't crawling from the outside in. So if we're only treating the perimeter on the exterior of the home, right, we're never going to be treating for a bed bug, right? We're only going to be treating for the ants and the cockroaches and stuff that occasionally invade the home. Now, people often say, well, what can I spray around my bed? Do you really want to sleep on pesticides?
Yeah, exactly. Now, are there any harm that a bed bug can do? For example, you hear ticks. I think ticks are notorious for carrying certain diseases. Do bed bugs carry any diseases?
Correct. And they don't transmit any diseases that we know of right now. And that's part of the problem, actually. It's because the federal government doesn't want to, not that they would necessarily be any good at trying to deal with the problem, but they don't want to take ownership of it because it doesn't spread a disease problem. So it's not an issue with, the health department or anything like that. Like rodents and cockroaches and other things are considered nuisance pests that spread disease, right? And so the federal government has, and local agencies do. We have a vector control district and things like that manage those insects. We don't have a bed bug control agency. It's just up to what the pest control industry wants to do. And personally, the problem has grown because we don't want to educate people. We're happy for the industry to see 30% growth every year within the industry. People that got one phone call 20 years ago now get 3 phone calls a day for bed bugs, right? That's how large the problem's gotten, right? And so what's their motivation to change?
Do they have any natural predators? I mean, do lizards eat bed bugs or anything like that?
No, I mean, you're not going to have lizards crawling around in your house. I mean, I'm sure a lizard would eat a bed bug, but bed bugs aren't out in the environment, right? They're only going to be in your home. They're only going to be close to where there's a food source, right? And remember that food source has to be available for them to be able to feed 15, 20 minutes, right? So if you come in and sit down somewhere, and say you go to a restaurant and you sit down and there's a bed bug population, bed bug's hungry, it comes out, it starts trying to find, it's got to crawl on you, it's got to try to find a way to get underneath your shirt, it's got to, maneuver to find some skin. And then it's going to take several minutes for it to feed. In the case of the one video there, it was 18 minutes for it to completely have a blood meal. So if you get up and leave during that time, now that bed bug's on you, right? You're taking it with you. You're not aware that it's there or anything. If it's a mature female that's already been impregnated and you take it home,
yikes.
Yikes, right? So that's the whole thing, right? So the only thing we can really do is be aware of what the signs are, right? So look for shed skins. Every single time that they feed on blood, right, they're going to shed their skin and grow to their larger size. So
like a snake. So you like
a snake, right? So you're going to see dead skins. You're also going to see what we call fecal staining, right? So those are basically it's poop. What happens is they consume all that blood, they take all the enzymes and nutrients and whatever they need out of it, and they poop out the rest, and it comes out like a dark, sticky tar. And each one of those little dots sticks to wherever it's at, whatever it lands on, it just sticks to it. So often after they fed, they go back and they're in a congregated place together, and they're all digesting their food, so they're all going through the same biological activity, right? And so you end up with a bunch of little black dots everywhere, right? So those fecal spots are good signs, shed skins. It's just being visually aware. You know, changing your sheets every week. When you change the sheets, don't just rip the sheets off, but actually examine them. Do you see any blood spots on them? Do you see anything that looks abnormal other than just, you know?
I was told also, forgive me, but I'm going to forget. But someone had mentioned when you go to hotels to get your laptop, turn off all the lights, put it on the center of the bed. And I don't know if this is for bed bugs. It was probably for something else. And then certain bugs would be attracted to it. So then you can kind of find out if that hotel has bed bugs. Is there something like that one could do that you're aware of? No?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so that part must have been for ticks or fleas or something else.
Well, fleas, often people will use like a piece of white paper. Fleas are attracted to white, so they're looking for those. A lot of times they'll jump and be attracted to.
So fleas are racist. I'm kidding.
So if you put a bright light over top of a piece of white paper, a lot of times you can detect fleas that way. But bed bugs, I don't want to say hibernating because that's not the right term, but they're kind of just literally sleeping and chilling out in their area. They're not cruising around looking for food. They wait for you to come close enough to them that they get indications, right? So they sense the increased level of CO2. They sense your body temperature, right? They sense the changes in the environment, you know, maybe a little bit of the movement of the bed if they're in the mattress, you know. So now we come out, now we feed, now we go back and hide. They're not walking around looking for people, right? They're literally waiting for their food source to come to you. So if you're going to have bed bugs in a room, I'm not saying that they can't be in a dresser that's 15 feet across the room, because you can have them there, but that's not going to be the only place. Think about if I told you that once a week you needed to take a dip into the ocean. How far would you live from the ocean?
Yeah, pretty close.
I mean, if you knew that you had to go at least once a week there, right? You probably wouldn't move to Missouri. Not anything against Missouri. I love the state, but you wouldn't want to make the commute every day, right? So same thing with bed bugs. Chances are if they're feeding on you, they're going to look for a place to hide closer than the dresser that's 15 foot away.
And right. You mentioned before what their lifespan is, but what is their lifespan if they don't get to eat? How long, and forgive me because you did mention this, how long can they go without eating?
Months. They can go months without feeding. So often what'll happen is when people get bed bugs, they discover they got them. It's not that hard. When you get them and you see them as adults, you do a little bit of Google search, you can find them, right? You see a picture and you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? Right? So then you start thinking about, okay, well, they need to feed on people. So I'm going to go sleep on the couch in the living room, or I'm going to go sleep in another room, thinking that if I go over there for a week or two, right, that they'll die and I can come back, right? Doesn't work that way, right? They either just chill out and wait for you to come back, or they receive enough cues, you know, either you walking in and picking up, clothes out of the closet or something like that, right? That they're still getting some sort of indication that when they get hungry enough, then they're going to start looking for you, right? They will search you out if they get hungry enough, right? And they get clues that, hey, there's a heat source over here. Okay, let me go investigate that, right? So they'll find you in the other room eventually, right? So now you have bed bugs in 2 rooms instead of just And that's why early detection, I can't speak about it enough. Early detection, being aware. If you think that you have a problem, you need to call somebody. You need to, address it right away. It's really, really important that those key things are done.
Because it's not going to get better.
Because it's not going to get better. They're not going to go away. So a couple different things, right? So when we first started in the industry and they were first looking for different things, they had this contraption, and this was called a Verify trap, and it had this fancy concoction. You put a little cartridge in here that released CO2 over time, and it was a pitfall trap, and you'd hang it up, and these things were like $50 a piece, right? And while they were effective, they didn't eliminate bed bugs. The only thing it did was tell you if you maybe had bed bugs in your room. So those actually are now discontinued. They don't make them anymore. So now one of the things on the market is what they call a little scent volcano, and you can get these online. And it's just a pitfall trap that goes in. There's a clear bottom to it, and there's a lure that goes inside that the bed bugs can smell. And it's rough on the outside, so they crawl up trying to investigate it, and they'll fall in here. And then, so you can put these underneath your bed. You can look at them every, month or so. And if you see a bed bug in there, or a bug that you're not sure what it is, right, it's an easy way to be able to say, oh, maybe I got a problem with something to do, right? So people go out of their way to try to eliminate harborage sites. So they put on mattress encasements, mattress protectors, right, where they completely encase their mattress. And what that does is it eliminates the bugs from being able to go in the little tucks and folds and stuff of the mattress seams and places where the bed bugs like to hide, which is good in that you're potentially making it a little bit harder for them to find harborage. But if they're just getting underneath the bed and getting in the box spring, are you getting down and crawling underneath and looking up underneath and seeing that, right? So I'm 50-50 on it, right? Like, it's a good tool because it makes it a little bit harder for them, and you don't want bed bugs in your mattress, but yet it also makes it harder because now they're hiding and they're less obvious to find.
Is there a foolproof way? I mean, No. You're just
so there are some different products that are actually chemically impregnated that you can put on the mattress. They typically put them on inverted, so they go underneath, but they're like a fitted sheet would be. And if the bed bug crawls across that, it will cause them to die over a period of time. It's not but they have a limited lifespan, because they have an active ingredient pesticide on them. So, you're replacing them, I think about every 18 months is about as long as they'll last. And they're well over $100. I mean, they're fairly expensive. And remember, you're only putting it on there on the case that you might bring in a bed bug. So it seems like a better use for a product like that. We see them used more in like a halfway house or a homeless shelter or something where you have different people transitioning into, the environment all the time, in and out. So that sort of stuff. But I don't look at those as being a good tool for the home per se.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, bed bugs, I'm guessing, is a nickname. Or do they have a real name? Or their
scientific name is Cymex lectularius.
I was going to say that
is what their botanical classification is. And then
say that one more.
Is bed bug, but they also have other common names, right? I never knew them, but I've heard them called like crimson reds. I don't know. I'd have to Google it, but there's several other names for bed bugs. But Cymex lectularius is the scientific name for a bed bug.
Well, whoever can say that 5 times gets a free gift certificate.
So let's talk about real estate. So I have no idea if it's ever affected a transaction, right? You would have a better idea about that.
I haven't seen it, but it's probably because it's just kind of hidden. I mean, not hidden on purpose, but just not detected maybe would be the proper word. And if so detected, I'm guessing I tell you right now, if I'm in a bed and I found out there's bed bugs, I'm calling you, I'm calling somebody, I'm getting them out of there. So whereas termites, they don't feed on us. So we're probably not as motivated to get rid of them. So I haven't seen it, but I'm not suggesting that they haven't been there at all. I'm sure they have.
Yeah. And I'm not aware of any legislation or anything requirements as far as mandatory disclosure seems like to me that if you knew that you had an active bed bug infestation, that it would be something as a seller you would be required to disclose.
I would say, yeah, I would say so. But again, I think they would be, okay, that's fine. I'll disclose them. I'm not going to disclose it because I'm going to get rid of these things,
Yeah, right. I'll just do a treatment and then it's gone and then I don't have to worry about it, right? And so, but there's no real certification. Were you effective in getting rid of them, right? And so after treatments, I like to say no bugs, no bites for at least 90 days, right? That's how long you have to go. So you don't see any more evidence. You don't have any physical bites or reactions from the bites. And personally, I don't. I used to, when I raised the bed bugs, I raised them this is like a salt and pepper, and there's a screen on the top, right? And the bugs would live inside, and then I could hide this, and then Dakota could find them. And I would create a bunch of them that were just like this with no bed bugs, so that he was only looking for the bed bug itself, not the bed bug in the container, right? And I would take with hundreds of bugs, I would put it on my arm like that, and they would feed in one little area, right? And I would barely get a reaction. A couple days later, a little bit of a welt. One bite I would never see. I'm never going to get a reaction from one bite that is going to make me say, hey, I might have bed bugs, where other people, swell up like crazy and get a huge reaction. So when somebody says, oh, I'm getting bitten, but they're not, no, you're reacting, they're not, right?
Got it.
If you have bed bugs in your bed, both people that are sleeping in the bed are being bitten.
How long does it take to train your dog, to train a dog to do that?
I bought him professionally trained, and there were a lot of mistakes made when they were doing it because it was new, right? So one of the issues that we have with it is you can't contain it, right? We can't train and hide bed bugs the same way that bugs are dispersed within a room. So, for example, it would be like me training a dog to find drugs in a plastic Ziploc bag or a paper bag or some sort of container, right? And they find that time and time and time again, right? And then I take that container and I take it into a room and I open it and I just throw it all over the room, right? And now I tell them, hey, go find those drugs. Well, he can't. They're everywhere, right? Because you basically put him inside that container. So trying to teach the dog without letting bed bugs out in your environment is really, really difficult. So a lot of times the early dogs that we had, they would change behavior, but they wouldn't alert because they knew that something was different because they were only smelling the bed bugs and not the other parts of the components. So there was a lot of proofing, a lot of training, a lot of work that needed to go into it. It's certainly not 100% science. And that's why we won't certify a building as being bed bug free. I get that call every couple, not as much anymore, but pest control, property management would call me wanting me to certify that a building was bed bug free so that they could basically cost shift the expensive bed bug treatment onto the customer. So the tenant calls, says, I have bed bugs. Now they say, okay, well, in your lease, you were aware that you didn't have bed bugs prior to, so now you have them. So therefore you must have brought them. So we'll do the treatment, but we're going to charge you for it. Now the state of California has made that illegal. It's not legal to do that, but property management still tries to do it all the time, right? Because they don't want that expense. They don't think it's a fair expense to them, right? If they've eliminated the bed bug infestation from within that property, and I just told you that if you get bed bugs in your home, it's because you brought them there or allowed somebody else in your home that had them, right? You invite a friend over that spends the night, that brings their suitcase, right? Who knows what it is, right? But you allowed it to come into your home, right? But yet the expense goes on to the landlord. So it does seem a little bit unfair to the landlord, but it is what it is. That's what the state of California said, right? So there's two things specific about it. So the state of California says that a landlord must provide a pest and vermin-free environment, right? So that is the requirement of the landlord. Now, they've gone even further and said they passed a law in 2017. It's AB 551, I believe, and it's specifically focused on the requirements, the legal requirements of bed bugs and tenant relationships. So they sat down and they developed this law, and it says that the landlords must provide information about what a bed bug is, the signs to look for, ways to prevent them within the environment, and then also give them resolutions. So when you find bed bugs, you must notify us within this amount of time. The landlord then has X number of time to be able to respond and inspect. If it's found, treatment's done. Then there's also retaliation clauses that are in there so that they can't raise the rent because somebody gets bed bugs. So I think it's 12 months after somebody gets a bed bug infestation that you can't go in and raise their rates. So there's a lot of different protections in there to do that. It was a good, well-meaning clause and bill when they passed it. Unfortunately, it's like page 28 of your lease agreement that's just in there. You initial the bottom of the page, but you never actually read it, right? So you don't know what your expectations of the landlord is, and the landlord doesn't know that you have the right expectation. So once again, you find bed bugs in your room, you try to do your own treatment. Right now, you cause a problem, so now they've spread into an adjoining room. Now, who's the cause? Right now, they're in two adjacent apartments, right? So it really becomes a problem when, people try to do their own treatment. They're unaware of what the problem is, or they're afraid that the cost is going to come back to them, right? If I call my landlord and report bed bugs and he comes out, how do I know they're not going to send me $1,000 bill?
What's your biggest job that you've seen, for example, an entire hotel filled with them?
It's a difficult one because if the problem's that severe, you don't need a dog to go detect it.
Good point.
Right? So massive bad infestations, I've seen them because I have friends in the industry and they're like, hey, let's go check it out or whatever, right? But it's not because they needed the experience and the expertise of the dog, right? So, and even when he's doing searches, right? So he's good for doing, if you get a report of a bed bug in the hotel, what's your due diligence to make sure that I can rent that out to the next person and not be worried about being sued if they find bed bugs in the facility, right? So often that's, referred to, and a lot of times they'll do it in-house. They'll pick up the sheets, they'll look around and say, oh, we don't see anything, right?
So as part of the protocol, probably for the housekeeping too, is to kind of look for that.
You would hope so. You would hope so, right? We don't see bed bugs in a hotel environment in the bed nearly as often as we see them in the headboard, in the dresser, nightstand next to the bed, because every single time we have a new guest come in, we strip the sheets and we put new sheets on, right? So that's a highly disturbed area, right? So any bed bugs that potentially could be in that environment, a lot of times we're removing them from it. Where the headboard, right? We're never taking the headboard down and looking at it, right? So the population, if it gets established up underneath there, right? Even though there may be some in the sheets that are getting pulled away, the main population is still in an environment where they're not being detected, not being seen. And the house cleaning staff isn't taking the headboards off to look behind to see if there's, you know what I mean? Unless there's some indication in the sheets and they're just stripping and putting new sheets on.
Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of, let's say you've got a young married couple of bed bugs. How long does it take for two bed bugs to turn into, 40, 20?
Oh, hardly any time at all. So an adult female, once she's been impregnated, when she lays, right, she feeds, then she's going to start laying eggs. She's going to lay anywhere from 3 to 5 eggs a day for 5 days. She's going to feed again. She's going to lay 3 to 5 eggs a day, every day for 6 months. So you figure out how much that is, right? Literally, I could go from a container like this with a few bed bugs to being thousands of bed bugs in a month or two, because it just becomes exponential.
Right.
Exponential. And of course, in this environment, I don't have a lot of them that are being killed off, right? So, there's a lot of different factors that you can put into it, right? Of all those eggs, how many hatch, how many of those eggs, they have to feed 5 times from the time that they hatch to become an adult to be able to breed. So, right, if you can do something in that process right? During that time cycle, right? Change your sheets, do all that sort of stuff, because they're going to be leaving little blood stains. They're going to be doing little things, right? But it's going to be small. But as soon as all of those eggs reach to adulthood, right? Now it just explodes, because now you have 20 that are laying 5 eggs a day. And then in 6 weeks, you have 1,000 that are laying 3 eggs a day. And literally, I've seen thousands of bed bugs in places where they didn't think they had bed bugs.
Wow, that is amazing.
They're that good. They're that good at hiding.
Those little buggers.
They're really good at hiding. I would recommend people that want to know exactly what a bed bug looks like, or what the fecal stains or blood stains look like. Just go on Google. Just do those terms, right? Fecal stain, blood smears, right? Bed bugs, right? Look at pictures and look at what the actual insect looks like. Like I said, they're easily as seen as an adult, but as a juvenile, you can barely see them. If they're not crawling or moving, I can't see them.
So all you do is detect. Do you tell me more about how you would walk through a process?
So when I started my business, because I came from the landscape side, when I saw all this information about bed bugs, I thought the problem is that people don't know about bed bugs, right? And I taught at Mount Sac for 5 years. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
But I taught horticulture classes, right? And it's education. It's teaching people how to think and knowing, what's important to them within their, environments. And it's hard because so many people think of pesticide or pest control as, okay, we're going to put this out, we're going to spray it, and we're not going to have problems for 6 weeks. And if we get a problem before then, it's because we didn't put enough out, or right. So next time we'll put more. They don't think about, well, maybe I needed to change and use a different product, or maybe there's a different reason for it. I'm really a big advocate about professional pest control, right? It's way too available to the general public to be able to go out without having to read the instructions. They just buy it. They put it in a thing, 1 ounce is good. Oh, I don't have anything to measure an ounce. So, that's got to be an ounce. And they put 5 ounces in there, right? And so becoming really aware of pesticides and pest control has really become a passion for me, right? And I thought to myself, if we're all learning about canines and how to use canines as a tool in the beginning, let me learn that, right? There's 1,000 guys that have been doing structural pest control treatments forever. Why do I need to compete with something that they already know, right? I'm on the same playing field as they are coming into it, right? And so I spent the first 5 or 6 years almost exclusively doing work for pest control companies that didn't have canines to do the work, right? So I'm fully licensed and insured to do treatments, but I never did them because I didn't want to compete against my customers that were hiring me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. And they I'm guessing too, I'm just coming through my mind. I'm curious on why termite people don't use canines to detect, but they probably don't have to, because there's evidence, there's evidence in the wood that there are termites, and then the feces also, they look for that. Or are there, I've never heard of it, but are there any termite companies that use canines?
There are some people that have experimented with it. I don't know how successful it is. Of course, everybody that tries it and uses technology always says that it works, but I don't know that it really does. It would be extremely difficult, I think, for that, just because the dog has to be able to smell the pest, right? And if you have a 2x4 that's got, termites in it, and it's inside a wall with insulation and drywall over top of it, right? How much smell? I mean, dogs are really good. It's really pretty amazing how good and accurate they can be.
And being that bed bugs don't live in that necessary environment where they're kind of tucked inside a piece of wood, the canine obviously works.
Well, there's enough scent for them to be able to locate them, right? And like I said, often they're not necessarily telling me, because they're used to finding bugs in coming out of one scent source, right? So in the whole entire room, there might be 1 or 2 containers that have bed bugs, where in a live room, now you have 25 bugs here, and then 10 feet away, you have 100 bugs here. And then, you have these little groups of bugs all over, right? So it becomes a lot harder for him to say, ooh, where's that smell, right? Sometimes he'll walk right to it and alert, but often it's a change in behavior. And then it's me as the pest control professional saying, oh, that's the room I need to go back and inspect, right? So then I'll go back and inspect that room, and then often I can find the bugs there, right? So if you think about like if you watch a police show, right, the canine will search a car and they'll alert, but then the canine officer has to go back in and open the car up and look to see and actually discover, okay, are there drugs actually there, right? So I still have the same role. Just because he does alert doesn't mean that there are bed bugs there, right? It's still the professional pest control person that's making that determination, right? He's just a tool that helps me. I keep referring to because he's laying down here right next to me.
Well, who's your biggest clients? Hotel managers? We mentioned property managers.
Property management, right? Some of it's still a lot of pest control people. Dakota's retired now, and so I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with it. I don't know if I'm going to look to do treatments. That door's kind of open to me right now. It's a very effective tool, but it's an expensive tool. It takes a lot of time every day to, take care of him and manage him regardless. And just sitting around waiting for the phone to ring without a steady source of income is difficult, right? It's not, I can afford to do it. I get enough business and enough, but I can't grow as a business, right? I can't bring on employees if I can't get some source of, regular income. And people don't want to pay for it. If it's not 100%, right? Why would you have someone come out? And if the problem's really severe, you don't need the dog to find them. So, like I said, when I started in 2010 researching it and opened my business in 2011, it was greatly different than what it is today, right? How the dogs are used, who's using canines, when they're being used. So it's a transition. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go exactly right now with it, but I still want to make sure that the public's aware of what bed bugs are. I really want to get rid of the negative persona that is around them. Certainly clutter has a lot to do with bed bug infestations because they have so many places to hide, but that's not filth, right? Filth and clutter are not the same things. And if you stop and think about it, right? I mean, everybody has their own ideas about it, right? But clutter is difficult because you can't see the signs and there's so many places for them to be able to hide. So if you do have a lot of clutter, if you are somebody that tends to be a pack rat, don't stuff it under your bed. Don't put it around your sleeping environment, right? Find someone somewhere else in the home so that now your sleeping environment is easier to inspect. It's easier to see. Okay, do I have bed bugs? I only need to look at the sheets and the mattress and the headboard, and I only need to look at that. I don't need to look at all the different boxes and stuff that are underneath it. And I understand, we have a lot of people living in, small units. And that's why I was talking about the lower income housing often having difficult problems with it, because once bed bugs get in there, there's so many people and so much just volume of stuff in the room. How do you recognize the problem? And then how do you treat it? It's so difficult. When I first started, one of the things that I wanted to do was to educate the population. And so I had connections within the school district. And so I reached out to a local school district, and I won't name them because I don't want them to look bad. But I worked with the science department specifically to find out what they were teaching within their science curriculum. And then I found out, okay, how can I find information about bed bugs that correlated with bed bugs? So, for example, one of the curriculum that they learn in life sciences in middle school is biological classification. So, what classes, class, order, phylum, genus, species. So, right. So what I did was I came in, I did a presentation, about bed bugs, educating them on bed bugs, but using all the different standards that they had been taught throughout the school year, right? Perfect way to take the things that they've learned in science class that meant nothing to them and say, look, this is how you apply that science to real life, right? Teachers loved it. Went over great the first year. So the second year, I go to the school board and say, hey, I want you guys to know what your staff is doing, right? They're being proactive. They're going about, trying to educate the population. So I call it a bed bug education day, right? The staff calls it a curriculum reinforcement day. And really, it's a success for everybody, right? Please come and see what we're doing, learn about bed bugs, enjoy, right? The next day, the principal has a call. You cannot do your bed bug presentation, right? The school board absolutely wanted it stopped, right? And not because they were afraid that I was going to sell something to a 13-year-old, but because they were afraid of the social stigma that would be put on the school. If the school's talking about bed bugs, they must have had a bed bug problem, right? That's how backwards we are within society, that we can't even discuss bed bugs and have them understood that it's just a pest that's directly after us, right? And so I try to just instill to property managers all the time, as long as it's you and the tenant trying to fight about who it is that's going to be responsible and who's going to pay, the bed bugs win. They just continue to expand. They just continue to, right? So even though landlords may not like it, right? Bite the bullet, right? Figure out a way to educate your customers, your tenants that are there, so that if they have a problem, they report it early so that you can get it taken care of, right? Personally, the people that have made the most money in bed bugs over the last 15 years has been the lawyers and the lawsuits that have been filed about them, right? It's just horrible, right? And it's just the lack of communication. It's the lack of awareness of people. And that's why I applaud you, Darryl, for wanting to reach out and do this, talk about a topic that people don't want to discuss. They don't want to talk about it, right? It's not interesting to them, right? But look at a video of a bed bug sucking your blood and you're going to say, you know what? I'm a little motivated. I want to spend 30 minutes and find out about bed bugs, right? And maybe avoid them in my life. And hopefully this will help to accomplish that.
Well, I think it will. This is really cool. I tell you, David, this has just been so interesting. I was kind of thinking that this would be a great show. I was interested in myself, so I appreciate you doing this. So if anybody wanted to reach out, David, and they had any questions for you, what's the best way to contact you?
Okay, so the best contact probably is my email. So my email is david@topdogdetection, TOPDOGDETECTION.com.
Awesome.
Reach out to me there, and I'll be, glad to respond and answer any questions and see what I can do to help you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. This was fantastic. So if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. This is fascinating stuff.
All righty. Thanks, Darryl.
Thanks.